TPS, or Temporary Protected Status, for thousands of Somali nationals living in Minnesota is ending, and the political class is pretending it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Not because of race, not because of ethnicity, but because this is what happens when Washington plays immigration roulette and the working class Americans are the ones holding the empty chamber. Policies have consequences. Communities feel them first. Politicians feel them, how about never? TPS was created for temporary crisis. War, famine, disasters. Temporary, short-term, emergency support. But in America, nothing stays temporary. TPS becomes 5 years, then 10, then 20, then, who cares? Just extend it again. And suddenly a policy built for relief becomes an open-ended promise nobody planned for. That's where Minnesota is right now. Just days after DHS announced TPS will end for Somalis, one of the largest Somali populations in the world, outside of Somalia, you already see panic, confusion, political finger-pointing, and media spin on both sides. But you know what's missing? Honesty, clarity, and how about, once again, leadership? Let's break this down like adults. First, what does TPS ending actually mean? It means thousands of people who've been living under protection now have expired legal status. It means work permits vanish. It means employers lose workers overnight. It means immigration courts get slammed. It means families face impossible decisions. It means entire neighborhoods don't know what tomorrow actually looks like. And here's the uncomfortable truth. TPS was never meant to become a 20-year immigration program. But that's exactly what politicians turned it into. When you stretch a temporary safety net for 2 decades, you don't fix anything. You just postpone the crisis until it explodes in the worst way possible. Minnesota is living in that explosion right now. Let's go a little bit deeper. Minnesota's Somali community didn't appear overnight. It formed because the U.S. opened its doors during Somalia's brutal civil war, a war that wiped out government, police, infrastructure, and stability. Churches stepped up, local families stepped up, nonprofits stepped up. Minnesota, known for welcoming refugees, became the epicenter. But Washington? Washington did what Washington always does. Offer temporary status, reauthorize it, ignore it, forget it, then act shocked when the consequences show up. Nothing about this moment is surprising. This is exactly what happens when temporary programs become permanent political talking points. The real issues here isn't Somalis. The real issue is the U.S. government's addiction to temporary solutions for permanent problems. Now, let's talk data, because emotion doesn't solve this. Information does. According to DHS, over 7,000 Somalis are currently under TPS. Minnesota has the largest Somali community in the United States. Many TPS holders have lived here for 15 to 20 years. Over 40% have U.S.-born children. Fewer than 10% have a pathway to legal permanent residence. Many have mortgages, businesses, degrees, and long-term employment. That means thousands of people, including parents of American children, are facing a legal cliff Washington once again created. And Minnesota is already overwhelmed by rising violent crime in Minneapolis, an exhausted police force, school districts struggling with staffing, language demands, and cultural gaps, massive housing shortage, a social safety net stretched thin, taxpayers who feel abandoned, political leaders who refuse to acknowledge the strain. And while all of this is happening, the media keeps saying, calm down, this is normal. This is not normal. This is the direct result of politicians refusing to deal with immigration honestly. Let's zoom in on what's really fueling the fire, because mainstream networks will never touch this stuff. Minnesota already has underlying tension between local communities and political leaders because of things like this. Refugee resettlement mismanagement, cultural clashes in certain neighborhoods, crime increases that officials hid or minimized for years, police shortages created by political decisions, state-funded benefits that created resentment, language barriers overwhelming school districts, political favoritism creating division, and leaders who refuse to listen to residents on the ground. Again, this is about policy failure, not ethnicity. But the main media twists any criticism into racism so they don't have to talk about incompetence. The backlash in Minnesota isn't anti-Somali. It's anti-chaos, anti-negligence, anti-politicians who create storms and never stand in the rain. People aren't angry at families trying to survive. They're angry at a government that keeps making decisions without thinking about the people who will live with the results. Now, let's talk about Washington, because both parties are guilty. Democrats say TPS must be extended forever. Republicans say it should end immediately. Both of them are wrong. You can't extend temporary status for 20 years, and you can't rip legal status away overnight without a plan. Washington refuses to do balance. Washington only does ignore it, delay it, exploit it, then detonate it. And now Minnesota is ground zero for that detonation. So let me ask you something. Why does every immigration policy in America become a political grenade? Why does every temporary program last longer than a mortgage? Why does every crisis get blamed on the people living through it instead of the people who created it? Here's the real answer. Chaos is profitable. TPS holders become talking points. Communities become test labs. And the people who suffer the most, Somali families and Minnesota residents, become collateral damage. Let's get brutally honest here, though. The United States has no long-term immigration strategy. None. Zero. Everything is crisis management wrapped around election cycles. The pattern is always the same. Wave of migrants, temporary fix, extension, more extensions, backlog, public frustration, politicians blame each other, then elections, then nothing changes, then repeat the whole cycle. And this is exactly why Minnesota is melting down right now. But let me show you what no one is saying, because it's politically dangerous. This TPS crisis isn't just about Minnesota. It's a preview, a warning, if you will, a blueprint for what's coming nationally, because we now have over 6 million recent border crossers, hundreds of thousands of asylum cases backlogged, cities like Chicago and New York declaring emergencies, border towns at capacity, sanctuary cities begging for federal help, states suing the federal government, migrant shelters overflowing, public patience collapsing. TPS ending for Somalis is just the beginning. If Washington doesn't fix how it handles immigration, you're going to see this same meltdown repeat in, say, Chicago, Denver, Seattle, Houston, New York, California, and dozens of small towns that don't have the resources to handle sudden population shifts. Now, let's talk about the moral dilemma, because too many commentators pretend it's simple. Is it moral to extend TPS forever? Is it moral to pull legal status away instantly? Is it moral to leave families in limbo for 20 years? Is it moral to dump huge responsibility on one state without funding? Is it moral to pretend refugee integration isn't incredibly difficult? The answer is the same every single time. No, 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 no. The answer is the same. The moral failure is not Somalis' families. It's not Minnesota residents. The moral failure is the U.S. government refusing to solve another problem. Let me make this crystal clear. Compassion without structure is chaos. Compassion without boundaries is destruction. Compassion without realism is disaster. Ending TPS without a transition plan is a disaster. Extending TPS indefinitely without a solution is also a disaster. So what's the answer? Here it is. And it's the solution Washington is terrified to admit. A real plan, a transparent pathway to citizenship for long-term TPS holders, 10 plus years. Strict non-extendable expiration dates for future TPS programs. Integration requirements, language, employment, civic responsibility. Federal funding for states absorbing large populations. Enforcement of existing immigration laws. No more 15-year temporary programs. A national immigration strategy that prioritizes stability, not politics. Because right now, Minnesota doesn't need speeches. Somali families don't need false hope. Residents don't need more chaos. They need a government that isn't afraid to tell the truth. And the truth is this. The crisis wasn't caused by Somali families. It was caused by irresponsible, cowardly politicians on both sides. And every time Washington does this, whether it's TPS, border surges, sanctuary city failures, or refugee resettlement, they never pay the price. The communities do. The schools do. The taxpayers do. The police do. The parents do. The real people living real lives do. Leadership means telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Policies shape communities. Bad policies break those communities. So if you want accountability, clarity, and national stability back in this country, drop enough in the comments. Share this video. Subscribe, because the mainstream isn't willing to say any of this. But the Watchman will. Stay sharp, stay aware. Watchman out.